Hello everyone, and welcome to the third and final checkpoint in my Vermintide 2 Career Showcase series. There's only 5 more videos until we're done, and I'd be lying to you if I said I wasn't feeling a little emotional while composing this video. Over 2,000 hours and 3 years have come and gone since the beginning of this project had begun. It started off as a passion project, one that at first would keep within the comfortable walls of familiarity and mostly refrain from subjects and careers I had no chemistry with. But after a while, it started becoming something more. I started pushing my boundaries and adapting to different playstyles. The vision of learning all 20 playstyles in Vermintide 2 became less and less blurry. I can now comfortably say, whereas I started off in Cataclysm only being comfortable with 2 careers, that I am at least proficient at 16. This is the very definition of why I lasted as long as I did with Vermintide, and honestly, I'd recommend you try the same too. But enough about that. Let's dive into the most widely agreed to be worst career in all of Vermintide 2, the Pyromancer. And it's not really the Pyromancer's output that makes it the worst to them. In an average match of Vermintide 2, I'll still score the highest damage output more times than not, with significant contributions to both elite and special kills. Then again, I kind of already do that regardless of who I play, so... And as far as output goes, I'd say that the Pyromancer is set up pretty nicely to rack on some good damage, whether it be range or melee. This thanks in large to the Pyromancer's passive, which gives her a stackable 30% crit chance based on overcharge, which is just one of many different ways you can build your Pyromancer to be more comfortable at high overcharge, a vastly different concept compared to the Battle Wizard, whose overall performance dwindles at high overcharge. She has an ability allowing her to deal 10% more range damage, which on one hand isn't really much to write home about, and on another is particularly underwhelming considering that's the only ability she gets. And her career skill isn't too overly impressive either. A locked-on target projectile that can seek out and destroy whatever you want it to. It has significantly low armor and cannot one-shot a Chaos Warrior. And that's really all we get to work with. But it's enough to get the ball rolling, I guess. Her passive ability doubles as both a general damage amplifier, along with a playstyle that would best be maximized by utilizing traits based on critical hits, such as Swift Slay or Resourceful Combatant for your melee, and Heatsink, Resourceful Combatant or Hunter for your range. And your ult can act as a means of removing threats outside of your range or getting some space from whatever is directly in front of you. You can also use it as a means of health recovery thanks to Bonded Flame from the 6 talent set, and that health you get every time you drop your ult is extremely vital. And that is for the simple fact that you are extremely squishy. Low health pool, no reliable damage reduction, no additional defensive ability or mobility. It's highly recommended that you never be by yourself for this reason. And while you can invest in extra mobility or damage reduction for that matter, it's actually really stupid, and I'll explain why later. This career wants your offense to be your defense, and it's just not very practical. And your health recovery, while still good, is still a downgrade compared to the Battle Wizard and Unchained, since they both have health recovery based on staggers. I wouldn't recommend melee kills despite the increased crit chance. Depending on the weapon you use, like the Fire Sword for example, the burn damage doesn't count for kills, so Sparksmith is the most versatile. Talent set number 2 is, to me, a two-way race between 10% increased crit chance if you have 96 health or higher, or an analog-based power scale system between 1 and 20% range power. The aforementioned Bonded Flame talent with Boon of Shalia on the side can restore 46 health every time you use your ult, making 10% increased crit chance relatively easy to maintain. Ride the Firewind is a good way to spread out how you deal damage. It's kind of like investing your chips in different things instead of stacking them all into one, which I can't dislike. I personally run crit chance. Boys! I have some news. I finally understand the 3rd talent set, and it only took me 15 episodes. But in the case of the Pyromancer, let me fill you in. Smiter and Mainstay do not do any additional range damage at all. That is a luxury provided only to enhance power, which also applies to the burn damage, by the by. Smiter and Mainstay either immediately or eventually exceed enhanced power in melee combat. So I'd recommend you go with either Enhanced Power or Mainstay, and considering how hard I roll with range damage, I'd have to argue Enhanced. Although being able to deal with elites 60% more effectively, albeit with just your melee weapon, is very tempting. Talent set number 4 is arguably at the same time the most and least flexible set. You may recall back in my Foot Knight video that I was debating the various situations and scenarios that would make a Foot Knight more worth running than a Grail Knight. The same applies here in regards to the Pyromancer Battle Wizard conundrum, with the Battle Wizard being the easy pick and the Pyromancer being the... well... the bad one. The Battle Wizard has extra burst damage, strong health recovery, nicely increased fire/range damage through several means, an incredible and versatile ult, and easily manageable overcharge, with the only downside being a loss of overall output and self-defensive capabilities at high overcharge. A downside that can pretty easily be minimized by worst case scenario pressing the R key on your keyboard for a few seconds. Do you see the imbalance going on here? The Pyromancer, on the other hand, has no additional mobility, very little defense, and slightly worse health recovery in exchange for better sustained burst damage, and can still do extra damage via the crits. But back to the matter at hand, while all three options are good, we gotta give it the Foot Knight treatment, which in other words means you run Deathly Dissipation. This will more than double your sustained burst damage, further separating the Pyromancer from the Battle Wizard. Talent set number 5 is the second talent set that really only has one option. Or so I thought. In fact, the 5th set really digs deep into the mentality of the Pyromancer. Starting off with the aforementioned mobility talent. Yeah, it's easy to get. Yeah, it still sucks, especially compared to the other two options. And you know what sucks just as hard? Soul Siphon, granting you a 10% damage reduction every time you get a special or elite kill. Congratulations, you're still pathetically weak. But you want to know something funny? And this really just goes into why I feel the Pyromancer should get a rework in general. It says 10%, but it's actually 30, and it doesn't tell you. So now here's the thing, you guys know this, I love damage reduction, and on a character as squishy as the Pyromancer, how can you beat that? Oh, I'll tell you how. Volan's Doctrine, a talent that removes all of your overcharge debuffs, meaning you can now keep your 10 to 20% lost attack speed, movement speed, and shaky dodge mechanics at high overcharge, and maintain up to 55% crit chance, making you considerably more comfortable, especially in melee combat, and especially at high overcharge, a de facto, unshakable difference between the Pyromancer and the Battle Wizard. Now, it should be noted that you can just vent your overcharge so you can keep all of your regular mechanics, which frees you up to roll with 30% damage reduction. But as the Foot Knight has taught me, you want 30% damage reduction? Go play Battle Wizard. In fact, it's actually kind of tragic how simple a fix this could be. From the sounds of it, Kata Onslaught tournaments actually have it arranged, so the Pyromancer has the 30% damage reduction set as an ability, and Volan's Doctrine still located in the 5th talent set slot. Now that sounds amazing, and would definitely put the Pyromancer more on the same level as the Battle Wizard. Soul and Volan's are both good, but I run with Volan's. Moving on to melee weapons, my two personal favorites are the Fire Sword and the Dagger. The Dagger has infinite light cleave, better finesse damage, fast attacks, great mobility, and cheap pushes, with the downside being a low block angle, meaning it's pretty easy to lose 4 times as much stamina, which I have tried to minimize through sticking close to teammates and pushing often, as well as a bit less control over elites. Compared to the Fire Sword, with infinite heavy cleave, slightly lower attacks, cleave, and mobility, regular push costs, and less finesse, in exchange for some better control over elites and a better block angle. Both are good, and originally I felt forced to use the Fire Sword due to what ranged weapons I preferred, but that has changed. My personal favorite for a while was the Fireball Staff, which I would argue was the best overall horde-based staff thanks to its increased damage, spammability, and cost. The conflagration had better staggers and range, not by much though, but I'd still go with the Fireball. And I also don't like the Flamestorm Staff, as it is costly, to one-dimensional, expends additional overcharge if you get hit while casting, and doesn't offer the kind of damage I was looking for. Oh yeah, and none of these staffs were good versus super armor. Compare that to the single target target staffs, more specifically the bolt staff. It can one-shot a wide variety of enemies, but needs additional power beyond what properties can accomplish to cover everything. And even then, it can't one-shot maulers and struggles with Chaos Berserkers. It can do some interesting damage if you put a whole bunch of chips into your power. In fact, if you want a 40% chance of one-shotting a Chaos Warrior, here's everything you need to do so. But in general, I feel like the Bolt Staff is more straightforward and consistent on the Battle Wizard, which comes with an easy 50% increased power, increased spacing, and casting speed. It's not that you can't use the Bolt Staff on Pyromancer. I personally just found something that works better for me. The only staff I haven't mentioned yet, the Coruscation Staff. Originally, I passed on this staff as the critical charged attack does no additional damage, but when I look at my stats at the end of each mission and how the weapon made fighting elites and specials so much easier, and it started getting harder and harder to ignore. The shotgun mechanic is the easiest and most reliable way to secure elite and special kills, compared to any of her other staffs, giving you dissipation and siphon much more consistently, and I am getting more comfortable with the minefield mechanic by the day, placing it where my enemies are coming from and where my team is currently, even right in front of me so I have a damage source to fight around. Now, when it comes to super armor damage, you got me, the Bolt Staff is better, but the Coruscation Staff is faster, stronger, and my personal pick for the staff I use on Pyromancer. However, the Fireball Staff does an excellent job at immediate impact than the Coruscation, so I still like that one too. And with the Coruscation Staff as my main range weapon, it makes it way easier to run with the dagger, which means I can get my ult back faster with Resourceful Combatant, which means I can be more comfortable with my health maintenance, which in its own way is like damage reduction. It's not perfect, but it'll do just fine. Generally, I'd focus on armor damage and crit chance for more burst damage. This also applies to the charm, and I'd put Decanter on it for whatever boss damage it's worth. Necklace, I go health, stamina, and Boon of Shalia for more career skill health, and my trinket has ult reduction, stamina regen, and shrapnel. Oh yeah, and my dagger has stamina, attack speed, and resourceful combatant, so I can push to my heart's content. And that is the Pyromancer for you. Not gonna lie, I know I thought I was going to hate this class, but it actually kind of turned out to be really entertaining despite the fact that a light breeze could basically cripple me. It might be because the melee combat with all the crits is oddly satisfying. Not too sure how Unchained will compare, which, for those who are unaware, is the lock for episode 16 before we move on to our final 4, but only time will tell. Thanks for watching, and have a good day. Later, peoples!